Hello and welcome to our second edition of Wine O'Clock. I'm Sarah from Lifestyling, and today we're going to be chatting to Trizanne Barnard. She's a winemaker that's based here in Cape Town, where we are, and looks like she's online now. Hi, Trizanne. I'm going to just add her to the chat quickly. There we go. Now, Trizanne is a winemaker based in Cape Town, and she's got two wine labels, Trizanne Signature Wines and Dawn Patrol Wines. Hi, Trizanne.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Let me just get the position in here. Here we go.
Perfect, yeah. Thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure. Lovely to be here.
Where are you based at the moment?
I'm in Komiki, and it's absolutely glorious. It's summer. I feel like summer finally arrived today.
It's cooking, yeah. It's hard to believe it's 5 o'clock. It's so hot here.
Yeah, same here, same here.
Are you managing still to find time to surf these days?
Sure. Not in the last week. I haven't. I've actually been a bit ill, but I do manage. If I don't get in the water, I feel completely unbalanced. So I've been in the water last week, but this week I'm kind of just waiting for this cold to pass, so I can get it back into the water.
Sorry to hear that. It's a bad time to be ill.
No,
but thanks for joining us anyway.
Cool.
So tell me, how's this year been for you? I mean, I know it's been a tough year for winemakers in particular. How's it affected you and your business?
Sarah, it's been obviously up and down. That first lockdown that we had, it's obviously a shock to the system. But I do export quite a bit of wine. So luckily they lifted that ban, I think 3 weeks after the first lockdown. So that allowed me to keep on with the exports. Obviously our local trade has been completely down and out. Which is, I mean, it's got a chain reaction to everyone, but I think I feel more for the restaurateurs than for myself, actually, because I think they have a lot more at stake and there's a lot more jobs lost there. I've had incredible support from the private clients, which has been amazing throughout. People they kept on ordering wines even though we couldn't deliver the wines, which was amazing. And I feel that I can see it's going with the season. So my exports kind of picked up again, and now it's going down a little bit. It depends what Europe's doing at the moment, but it's fine. I can't complain. I luckily have most of my, I've got my eggs quite spread in different baskets, and it's been a saving grace not to have a few eggs in various baskets. It's one thing that I've learned this year in business is that to have not everything in one basket helps a lot. To diversify is key in situations like this. So that's helped me a lot to get through.
So what were some new changes you made? I mean, I've noticed that recently you can buy your wines right off your website. Was that something you implemented this year?
No. I've had that for quite a few years. And it's funny enough, the e-commerce platform was never, I mean, people bought, but never like they bought like during lockdown. I think for all of us as consumers, we've seen our own consumerism and our own behaviors that we tend to buy online now. And I think that trend is definitely here to stay. So that's been there, but I think what I've changed is I started communicating a lot more with my clients via newsletters or social platforms. And that's helped them to kind of remember that you can buy online. So I
think that's one of the benefits of digital media and marketing is you're now capable of doing that yourself. You're not relying on magazines to feature you and that kind of thing. You can now take that into your own hands and have a bit more control over that and connect directly with your customers, as you say.
It's true. And it's incredible how you do connect. I've had so many consumers or clients just emailing, and then you kind of there's an email back, and you kind of start this chat, which you normally would never have. I also find that I think people during COVID had a bit more time, and probably had they kind of wanted to reach out. So it was interesting to kind of make that connections with people that I've never made connections with.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is you know, I grew up feeling like I wasn't particularly like a brand person, but I think the idea of brand loyalty is different now because people like to support a business where they know the person behind the business or they feel like they connect with that person. So you as a brand, it's great that your name is the brand because people associate it directly with you. It's not just this faceless corporation.
Yeah, no, I think with, you know, a lot of our wine brands are very personal. I think that's the beauty of our wine industry, that you can connect with the person directly behind it. So I think overall in the wine industry, we're quite lucky to have that. But yes, I hear what you're saying with bigger corporations in other industries where, you know, you just can never reach that people. You know, there's just no face behind it. It's like when
And
you're
I
doing an
think
online query and,
consumers,
pardon?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was going to say, I think consumers feel like supporting a business where they know who's benefiting from it, as
Absolutely.
opposed to a big faceless major wine label or something like that that you can maybe buy and pick and pay. That's you kind of don't know where that money's going at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Just while I remember some housekeeping, at the end of this chat, people will be able to order a mixed case of wine from Lifestyling that we've curated some of Trizanne's wines. So we've got 6 that we're going to talk through today. And the mechanism for ordering that will just be to email us at orders@lifestyling.co.za. After this chat, though, we'll put the video onto our website and you'll be able to access all the tasting notes from there, and all the information is going to be on our website as well. So let's just to start off, can you tell us a bit about your history in winemaking? How did you get into wine and when did you start your own labels?
Sure. That takes me back to when I finished school, which was mid-90s. I actually didn't know what I wanted to do after matric. So I matriculated in 96 and I then actually went overseas. I went to the kibbutz in 97, and the kibbutz was my first introduction to agriculture. Funnily enough, like that was also my first wine tasting in the Golan Heights. So I think agriculture, that seed was kind of planted back then. After Israel, went to the UK and I worked in a fine dining restaurant, and that exposed me obviously to international wines for the first time. So I came back only after 2 years being abroad, and then decided to study winemaking, or with BSc as my base. And if I wanted to change, I could change, because I really felt like, geez, I didn't come from a wine industry. I'm 2 years out of school, and now I'm going into an industry that I'm going to study that I actually know nothing about. But luckily,
was this at Stellenbosch?
This was at Stellenbosch, yeah. But I immediately started working as a student, doing tastings and to cellar tours at the Bergkelder and working at Jordan Winery. So I got into it and just loved the course. I mean, I think that it's such an incredible balance between chemistry and science. And so that really tickled my fancy. And then, yeah, graduated. I did my internship at Jordan Winery, actually, as a student. And Gary and Kathy, being such incredible entrepreneurs, I think they, for me to work under them and just to see how they operate a business, probably planted the seed for me to start my own thing. But it took a few years before then. I mean, I then traveled again to Australia and to France, quite a few years, doing harvests abroad. Came back, started as assistant winemaker at Klein Constantia. And then from there, I moved on to the sister vineyard in Vulca. And then I was there within the Klein Constantia and Vulca operation for about 5 years. And then I decided to take the leap and start my own thing, which was not.
So when you studied, when you studied, was it unusual for a woman to be studying winemaking at Stellenbosch at that time?
No, you know what? Actually, our class, I'm not so sure about the history, but our class, we had, I can't remember, about 70 students, which was quite a lot, of which 47% were women. So, yeah, so almost 50% of our class graduated as female winemakers. But out of that, today, I'm not actually sure how many winemakers, women winemakers are out there. I mean, we've got incredible winemakers from our specific class, just to mention Chris Molyneux from Molyneux and Liu, Alex Terry from Piermont, Ntiki Belela was with me, and quite a few other guys, like remarkable winemakers. But I think probably 30%, 20% of those winemakers are still winemaking and female winemakers. So you do kind of change tact, you know, if you figure out this is not exactly for you.
Yeah. So how long have you been running your own wine labels now?
It's been 12 years now, going on to 13 years. Yeah. So I resigned in 2008. So 2009 was my first vintage on my own. Yeah.
Okay. And have you developed a specific philosophy when it comes to winemaking?
Sure. I think my philosophy still stands from where I started out, and that's basically finding the right place for the grape. You know, because of my history, you know, Margaret River in Australia is cool climate. Then Alsace was kind of cool climate. Back at Klein Constantia was cool climate. I had this idea of creating white wines from cool climate areas because I was used to that. I was used to working with cool climate white varietals. So Elam was for me kind of definitely a kind of no-brainer to go for Sauvignon as a cool climate area, even though back then it wasn't very well known, and even to today it's not a big production area. You know, we only have about 5 farms out there producing grapes. And the reason for that, it is so far, and logistically, it's just not an easy, it's not easy. It's not easy farming out there because we are dealing with incredible winds. We've got these incredible, beautiful ocean masses coming together there. But that's exactly the elements that are so great for Sauvignon Blanc. So I immediately kind of gravitated to Elam as an area for great whites. And then I decided to go basically opposite direction for my reds. And the Swartland then was basically the kind of no-brainer. And to this day, I still source from both those areas. Obviously, my portfolio has expanded quite a bit, and I've introduced different areas as well. But the main focus is still Elam and Swartland.
Okay, and yeah, I tend to agree with you with the cool climate whites. I find I've got a particular sensitivity to acidity, so I find a lot of Sauvignon Blancs that maybe come from areas like Stellenbosch where it's really hot. You've got the higher alcohol content, higher fruitiness, and then they end up adding a lot of acid to balance it out. And overall, it's just something that I didn't find really palatable. And I remember speaking to you when I met you a couple of years ago. I think I said to you that I very seldom like a Sauvignon Blanc that's not blended with Semillon. And you, if I'm correct, blend Semillon with all of your Sauvignon Blancs.
Pretty much, yeah. I do.
What is it that the Semillon does there? How does it balance out the Sauvignon Blanc for you?
For me, I guess it's what you just said. It's the acid. It's a great, you know, counter for the Sauvignon acids. Although, just to reiterate on the acids from Elam, yes, we can get big acids out there, but it depends when you pick. So I generally try and pick, well, and it depends on the vineyards really, but our acids aren't that high in Elam because we don't, you know, the grapes naturally ripen and the acids naturally come down. We don't have to add any acids, so it kind of balances it out really nicely. With Semillon, I find it's just a variety in terms of flavor profile that really like joins well with Sauvignon Blanc. It really supports Sauvignon Blanc flavors. They're not too different from each other. But Sauvignon has the racy acidity and Semillon doesn't. Semillon has this kind of fleshy, full palate and definitely much lower acid. So they actually they do so well together that I find it hard not to put them together. I can't always put a dash of Semillon even in my tank fermented stuff. And then when I go with the barrel fermented stuff, I kind of go 50-50.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I think your whites are really amazing. So, okay, so you've got the cool climate whites and you've got the sparkling reds. Then across your labels, you've got it's three different ranges, right? So you've got do you want to tell me about it? You've got the reserves.
Yes. So it kind of started off with just the straight CSW Trizanne Signature Wines. And then I kind of started bringing in the reserve wines, which was a lot more focused on specific parcels, a lot more focused on barrel fermentations. And so that I continued for many years. And then recently I brought in Dawn Patrol. So Dawn Patrol wines were a brand that I created for the UK exclusively. But a couple of years later, a couple of years ago, I decided maybe, I should really bring it into South Africa because it's such a cool brand in terms of look and feel and what I stand for, what I love. But it's also a brand. Yeah.
Here we can see the label.
But it's also a brand that, I kept on asking myself, how do I actually give back into our wine industry? Our wine industry, it's got a bit of a dark cloud, a bit of a paradox, it's booze and it's the DOP system. And you kind of think after a while, what am I actually doing to make a difference? And I decided to use Dawn Patrol then as a vehicle. So it's a sustainable brand where it actually partnered with a few NGOs. And the idea is to put a wine out there that when you're buying that wine, you're actually supporting these guys. So the NGOs that I partnered with is Ocean Pledge and Surf Pop. So they're not related to the wine industry, but they're related to our oceans. And that is really, like, for me, one of my biggest passions. And I think, it doesn't really matter how you give back and to whom you give back, as long as we're like paying it forward somehow. And these guys, it resonated with me and my ethos and what I want to put out there. So yeah, you guys can check it out. Ocean Pledge and Surf Pop. They based on trying to ban single plastic usage, and as well, Surf Pop is a group of guys that are trying to uplift our community here in Masiphumelele by giving surf therapy to the children. So a lot of our children in our settlements suffer from post-traumatic stress, and they figured out on sound studies that surf is incredible therapy for that. Yeah, I mean, there's many organizations that do it. There's Ways for Change. There's a lot of guys, 9 Miles, that are using surf as a surf therapy. And Ocean Pop, Surf Pop is just another one of those, which I've decided to partner with. So that's Dawn
I think that's
Patrol.
fantastic. That's really great that you are supporting those guys. And so what's amazing, I think, about the Dawn Patrol wines is they're really easy drinking. The brands are beautiful. The fact that they come in at a price point under 100 Rand these days is great. It's hard to find a good bottle of wine at that price point. And so you've got Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin, the Rosé, and a red. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. So I've got the 4, and I'm trying to decentralize the way we're doing things, decentralizing the way we are going about the usual way of getting this wine out to the consumer. So trying to get directly to consumer with this wine. And that's why I can have this wine under $100. I mean, it completely over delivers on quality, and obviously on price point as well. For me, the trick is, how do I get it straight to the consumer without going to all the different channels, so that the consumer in the end actually benefits because they're getting a great wine at a great price. I've
noticed if you try find your wine online, I think it's about 90 Rand a bottle elsewhere, and then on your website it averages out about, I think, 83 a bottle.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a little bit cheaper to buy directly from you.
Absolutely, yeah. And Dawn Patrol as well. I mean, Dawn Patrol, if you go anywhere in any shop, it will probably max around, exactly what you just said. So I thought you were talking about CSW. So yeah, the idea is to get direct to consumer so that they benefit from it. So we'll see how it goes. It's very new. It's quite a new concept as well. If you go on the dawnpatrolwines.com website, there's different ways I'm trying to get the consumer involved. So there's the Get Amped affiliate program. So I won't go onto that, but if people want to like check it out, they can go onto that and just see how they can get involved.
Awesome, yeah. And then also I see you recently launched the Dawn Patrol in the can, which is interesting because it's kind of a novel format that a couple of people are doing lately. We were just talking about it last night, and I was saying it's kind of the perfect thing if you're going away for a long weekend, like to a music festival or something, and you are a wine drinker, but it's not practical to lug bottles of wine with you and wine glasses and all of that. Yeah. So they kind of take up less space. They're lighter to transport, kind of easy to chill in the cooler box. What was the thinking there? Is it about reaching a different market, or is it environmentally better than glass?
It's a bit of both, Sarah. So exactly what you've just mentioned, the fact that it's lighter and it's easier to carry, all of those stuff actually relates back to environmental impacts. So you can imagine, just going on volume and weight, to transport in any supply chain, you're saving a lot there. Actually, our can recycling in South Africa is pretty good. I mean, currently we're recycling about 75% of our cans. Cans is a metal. It's a metal, so it's infinite. So you can melt it down and reuse it again. Whereas with glass, which is obviously also recyclable, we don't recycle that much in South Africa, and we can't reuse. We've got to like bring in new glass to create new bottles. So from a recycling point of view, can is definitely superior at the moment. Obviously, there's other downfalls. Packaging in its own sense, we are damaging this planet. So I'm trying to find a solution. I think in the end, the best solution is going to be refilling, and that's something that I'm really trying to promote in my valley, because
refilling bottles.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be fantastic. I said that would be fantastic if you could do that.
I mean, that's the way we should go. If you go to any small grocery shops in France or whatever, you can actually fill up, your canisters or bottles or whatever you take at the grocery shop. So you're reusing constantly, and I think I just want South Africans to start thinking that way. Obviously, we have to make it available for South Africans, and our authorities have to make it available for us. This is where I'm sitting with. I'm sitting a bit of a headaches with our authorities to get this going. But ultimately, that's where I want to go with Dawn Patrol specifically, is on a refill space. For now, the cans is a good alternative, and it's a good alternative for, like you said, lifestyle, whatever, if you're on the beach or picnics or, going up the mountain or whatever. And also trying to see if it does tickle the fancy of a different consumer, maybe a younger consumer that's not into wine yet, that would be keen to try wine if it comes in different packaging. So it's a little bit of everything. But I think my main drive is, how are we being sustainable here? And I'm not saying that cans is the definitive answer here. I'm just trying to move in a direction.
Yeah. Is there any effect on the flavor? I mean, I know with beer, everyone always says, it tastes better in a bottle than in a can. It's just, can't explain why. Is there any effect on the taste of the wine?
We're constantly testing and also doing like heat tests, and to see what the wine is doing in can. I had a blind tasting the other day, and we did it specifically with a rosé, and the rosé in can was actually fresher than the one in bottle. Perhaps the rosé wasn't the best one to do it on, because rosé normally is in a clear bottle, in a flint bottle. It gets light penetration, so it really has that kind of light effect on that bottle. Where within a can you don't have that. So the color, there was a slight color difference. The can rosé was actually slightly more brighter pink, where this one is slightly more salmon color.
Oh wow.
And on the palate, the can was actually much fresher for me. It actually to be completely honest, it did taste, I mean, I love the rosé in bottle, but the can was definitely much more fresher than the bottle. So What it's going to do in can long term, that remains to be seen. You know, we've got guys that's been in can since December, so they're going on to 11-month period now. So, and I think there is, you know, we need to do serious tastings to see, can you see a big difference? You know, obviously wine does develop as in bottle.
Yeah.
Haven't come across where it's completely off and you can't taste it. You shouldn't drink it anymore. But
What's
it's
the
very,
oldest you kept a can?
pardon?
What's the longest you kept a can for that you've opened?
Well, I don't, on the Dawn Patrol, you know, we only canned in August. So I can't say for Dawn Patrol, but
Okay.
I know with other brands, the guys are going on to 11 months now. So, you know, we need to taste those and decide, you know, how is it developing in can. So it is early days. I think ideally you would want people to drink the wine when it hits the shelves, but I think definitely we have at least a year to play with, maybe longer.
So how do you test that? You open a can every month and taste it and compare to what you remember it being like before?
Yeah, so for the moment we either you do that, or I mean we kind of have good memory banks, but the best thing is to do it with heat tests and to see. So you have a can now and then you put it in a heat bath, which Bev can, the guys that supply the cans, they help us do that. And to see, because now you're almost, you're fast tracking the aging of the wine in can by doing heat tests. And then compare it to what you currently have in can. So you almost, you're adding age to that can in lab. And then obviously the guys that are canning the same wine but say on different stages of the year to see, okay, what's the big difference there. But yeah, I mean, as a winemaker and even as a consumer, you'd know when this wine just isn't good enough anymore, you know. It might not be the same as what it was when it was canned, but it's not necessarily to say it's bad, you know. It's just developed, and we just hope it develops in a positive direction.
Absolutely, yeah. Can we talk a little bit about the two Dawn Patrols that we've got in the case? So we've got the Chenin Blanc, which is from Swartland, is that right?
Yeah, so both of them are Swartland. We've got the Chenin and we've got the Rosé, Cinsault Rosé. Both from Swartland parcels. Chenin is partly tank fermented, partly foudre. Foudre just being big wooden vessels, but they're very old, so they're not giving any oak to the wine. It's just almost creating a micro-oxygenated fermentation vessel.
Okay.
So
are these bush wines?
They are, the Chenin is partly bush vine and partly trellis, and the Cinsault is same, also partly bush vine, but mostly trellis grapes. So yeah, they just, I mean, for me, they're just great expressions of what Swartland can give. You know, they're not your crazy in-depth wines, but they're wonderful summer wines. The Chenin is new to the range. I can't see how, I don't know how it's going to age, but I know Chenin generally does age really fantastically. So I've got no worries about that one. I know with the Rosé, the 2018 was my first one. And that wine just, it's stunning. It just, you know, it's good when you bottle it, and it's good with a bit of age. I love the color of the Rosé. It's got that beautiful salmon color. It's bone dry, but it's so, you know, there's such beautiful fruit on it that you it's, for me, it's just a lovely rosé, lovely summer drink.
And it's 100% Cinsault grapes, right? So that's red grapes.
Yeah. So
and you've chosen to call it a rosé rather than a Blanc de Noir. Is that just because it's more accessible as a term, or is there another reason for that?
No, just, you know, just more accessible. Yeah. So with the Cinsault, you're familiar with winemaking. So basically we just give it a few hours of skin contact, and then we take it off the skins and we can kind of make a white wine. So that's how we make this wine. I think it's both of them are really good examples as to what the Swartland can give. in terms of fruit structure. And these varieties specifically do extremely well in the Swartland. You know, they can handle the heat and the drought of the Swartland.
Yeah, I think they're beautiful wines. And I went to Riba Castile, I think last year, and I went to a few of the states there, and I find there's something really distinctive and beautiful about the Chenin coming from there. I mean, Alice Valloren makes a beautiful one. The Molyneux Kloof Street Chenin is also from that area. How do you describe that characteristic that you're getting in those Chenins from Swartland?
I think that's directly from the soils, from the Swartland. You know, the granite and the schist that we get, that you kind of almost get that element into the wines. That's, you know, it's very typical Swartland, shale, Swartland gravel, and that just translates into the Chenin. So if you go to Elam, you're going to get a very specific character within the Sauvignon, and that translates again from the soils out there. You've got the ferrocrete soils there. So yeah, I think it's just, you know, really like expressing where the grapes are from, and that's from the Swartland soils.
Yeah. Okay, let's jump to the TSW. So we've got, as you said, the Sauvignon Blanc, which is also got a little bit of Semillon in it. What's the balance there?
It's 94% Sauvignon and 6% Sem. Yeah. So.
And that's also. Oh, that's not coming from Elam. Hey, I see it says wine of origin Western.
Partly Elam, yeah. So actually, all my Sauvignon up to this year has always been from Elam. And actually, in 2019, I had a shortage of grapes from the Elam, so I had to blend in grapes from other areas. So there's partly Walker Bay, partly Stellenbosch in there. But when you taste the wine, it definitely still has that kind of cool climate Sauvignon streak through it, which is what I love making. So the Elam and the Walker Bay grapes, I don't say they've got similar profiles, but they've got that cool climate profile. So you get that still in this wine. If you had to compare it to 2018 and all the other wines from Elam, you get that same thread is in that wine. And then the Stellenbosch fruit obviously gave it a slightly more kind of more fruit instead of like this kind of steely mineral character. So it actually gives a little bit of more fruit in the wine. So I think it's a great balance for me of fruit. Obviously it was the first year that I did it, so I wasn't 100% sure, but yeah.
And are you happy with it compared to the straight Elam version?
Yeah, for me, the question was, how is it going to age? Because I'm so, you know, familiar with Elam and, you know, comfortable that it ages really well in bottle. You know, I never have to doubt that ever. So I was a little bit worried as to how this wine is going to stand up to that. And it's been proving to develop beautifully in the bottle. So luckily, no worries there. I guess, you know, it's got to do with the fact that there's a nice pH and acid there as well. But the fruit profile is going in the same direction that I'd want, you know, that I've experienced with my Elam fruit with age in the bottle. So yeah, it's. So
how would you describe that flavor, the flavor profile of the Sauvignon?
Well, it does change over time a lot. You know, in the beginning, it's, you know, like any Sauvignon, it's very style and ester driven in the beginning. And those are
you mean in the beginning of the glass when you first taste it?
No, in the beginning of you know, once you've made that wine and it's in bottle. So basically, I'm saying it changes in time over bottle in the bottle. So when I brought out this wine, you know, you had a lot of upfront gooseberries, a lot of upfront passion fruit, and that's not changed. You know, a year later, it's gone more into that kind of mineral state. There's definitely more, the herbaceousness of your cooler climate is standing out, which, I mean, in balance is beautiful. That's what you want from a cool climate, Sauvignon. Yeah. So I also find that the wine structure is developing stunningly. So, you know, that, and for me, that is what cool climate gives you. It actually doesn't fall away. It's not just acid, because, you know, often with Sauvignon, it's just acid after a while. It doesn't have the structure, it doesn't have the palate and the weight to kind of support that acid. And I find with this wine, it still has that, it develops with, and it's got beautiful structure. So those are the important things for me in a wine. You know, I don't mind that those esters and the kind of primary fermentation character goes after a while. I know a lot of people love that in a Sauvignon, and that's why they buy Sauvignon. I don't make Sauvignon for that. I make Sauvignon to kind of develop in structure after time in the bottle. So.
And what would you say is the aging potential of this wine?
Sure, forever. It's under screw cap. So,
is that really true? There's a screw cap in, it's just going to last forever and ever.
No. You've got the same kind of oxygen take up. It's just how it reacts differently under cork, and that oxygen uptake is only during bottling. You know, when you have a cork, you've got, cork has these like little air bubbles inside. So when you compress it to go into the bottle, you're basically compressing air back into the bottle. So you've got this, like, there's a big uptake of air in that, of oxygen within the first 6 months of bottling. And with screw cap, you also have a bit of a headspace. So there's also that kind of air, oxygen uptake. It's just how that wine reacts during, I'm getting very technical here, during that time. But so wine is not, under screw cap, it's not forever. It's not frozen in time. Especially once you open a bottle of wine under screw cap, it kind of almost quickly catches up to its age. But I think, you know, it does give it, screw cap does give it longevity, because it does just ages differently to cork. But I think this wine, I mean, I'm sitting still with a 2009, my first vintage, which was under screw cap. And that wine is still completely drinkable. You know, so it's 11 years old now. When you pour it, at first, it is beautifully clear. You know, it's not yellow. And then it kind of, as it lingers in the glass, it definitely changes structure. But it's completely still drinkable. So, I mean, it depends how tolerable you are with aged wines and their tertiary character. You know, I believe Sauvignon actually should be drunk aged. You know, if you look at the profile and the technical analysis of Sauvignon, it's one of the wines that should really last, because it's got high acid and low pH. But if it doesn't have structure, then definitely there's nothing to age, really. It is just going to be acid after a while. But I think with cool climate Sauvignons, you've got beautiful structure, you've got beautiful analysis to keep this wine in the bottle, and it just gets better for me. I generally love drinking Sauvignons between 5 and 8 years in bottle. If it had wood on, even longer, definitely longer. But that's everybody's personal preference, you know. A lot of people don't like those tertiary kind of notes, the kind of developed notes, kind of honey, waxy notes. I like that. So it really depends on the consumer.
Yeah. And then comparing it to your reserve white, which is also a Sauvignon Semillon blend, how would you compare the two, and what's the difference in the process of winemaking?
Sure, they're very, very different in process of winemaking. So the TSW is tank fermented Sauvignon. I crush the berries, goes in, you know, I settle the juice, and it goes into tank. Whereas with the reserve, I whole bunch press. I don't settle the juice, and I go straight to barrel. And I ferment naturally. So very different in winemaking technique. So the Sav Sem Reserve is a 50-50 blend, so it's 50% Sauvignon, 50% Sem. So both parcels barrel for being fermented and barrel matured for 11 months. So completely different style of wine. This is definitely your.
You describe it as a wooded Sauvignon.
Yeah, I mean it's 100% wooded, but it's for me it's a Bordeaux blend. You know, it doesn't. It's not. You know, it's the Semillon plays such a big role in this wine. You know, giving that kind of structure and that fullness on the palate. You know, even the aromatics is very different to in tank. You know, for me, you get that kind of white flower, lime character, lemongrass character. It's very different to the tank fermented Sauvignon. Grapes are, some of these parcels are actually from, from exactly the same vineyard, but winemaking does definitely play a role here, and how I'm doing things differently with these two wines.
And the price point to compare the two, I'm not sure what the TSW retails for. Do you know offhand?
It's about just 100 or just over 100 rand, and I think the reserve is retailing around probably about 200 rand.
200 rand a bottle, yeah. Okay, and then let's hop to the TSW Swartland Syrah. I've got a bottle here. That's what that looks like. I'm sure you're aware of it, but I've started seeing it on wine lists in quite a few restaurants around Cape Town. Which is nice to see.
That is, thank you very much. That is all David and Jane from Ex Animo's hard work there.
Yeah.
But it is a cool wine. I think, again, it's a Swartland wine. David always kind of describes it as a good end. If you needed a kind of a window or glimpse into Swartland, this one gives you that, because it's not heavily overpriced, or it's not overpriced at all, but it gives you the exact same fruit structure, tannin structure that you'd expect from Swartland. So it's a very good introduction to the Swartland without having to pay the price tag on it. And I think, it's a very accessible wine. It's packed with a beautiful fruit, some subtle aromas, but, it's accessible. And it's accessible easily on. So I think restaurants like the wine because it fits well on the menu. It goes well with food. It's a good wine for the price, and to have a Swartland wine on the menu and not paying exuberant amount of money.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it does tick a lot of boxes in terms of retail.
Yeah, and I think we've got the 2019 in the mixed case that we put together for lifestyling.
Yeah.
When is the ideal time to drink that?
It is a young wine. It's up to the consumer and how they like their tannins. If they fine with young crunchy tannins, then obviously they're going to love this wine now. I like younger red wines. It's funny. I like older white wines and I like younger red wines. I'm different. And this wine I obviously make in a style that it's, that it is easily accessible early on. So there's not a lot. There is no new oak on this wine. We try and work gentle with the fruit, not to extract too much tannin. So it's definitely drinkable now, very drinkable. But I think, half a year from now and a year from now, it's going to be fantastic.
And how does this wine change across vintages? Do you try to keep it consistent, or do you let it change year after year?
I try and keep it consistent, but it really depends on the vintage. But yeah, I think style-wise, we're trying to keep it in the specific style that we are in at the moment. Not changing much to the winemaking or the wood regime or anything like that. For me, it's important to keep that wine accessible and also from an early stage on. And we just, we're lucky to get really good fruit. So
yeah. And then, if you had to compare the grapes that were a product of that time when we had a major drought in Cape Town versus afterwards, is there much difference in the flavor profile?
There are subtle differences, of course. There was a lot of concentration with drought. But we're trying to, I think, we're sourcing and trying to get grapes that are, that you're familiar with, the flavors that you're familiar with. So not trying to diverse too much away from the style. But obviously there are vintage differences. That's the beauty of wine. We are working every year. We're working with something different.
Yeah. Okay. And then your reserve Syrah, now that comes from Elim rather than Swartland. So what's the flavor profile like comparatively? It must be very different. I haven't actually tried mine yet.
It is very different. So, when you're tasting the Swartland Syrah, you're very much more into your kind of black dark fruit, kind of olivey tapenade. style, and then you move on to the Elam Syrah, and you're moving into white pepper country, and it's very spicy, and it's got more of a red fruit spectrum. For me, this is my absolute favorite wine to work with, grapes to source from. I love the Elam Syrah blocks. You know, we farm it so differently to the Swartland. You know, we expose the bunch zone completely from very early on for a lot of light penetration, and it just absolutely spells out cool climate. It's for me, it's perfumed, it's red fruit, it's so spicy, it's got this beautiful black pepper character. You can't miss this wine. You know, if it's in a lineup, you know that if you're familiar with Elam fruit, and Elam fruit that's not been for hanging too long, because I've made that mistake from, you know, in the earlier days. I tried to almost overcompensate for cool climate, and I would pick much later and at a high alcohol, because you can get high alcohols in the cooler climate areas. You just wait a lot longer. And I used to do that with the Elam Syrah. You know, that was just the style that I was kind of used to making back then. You know, in the days when I used to work for Volker, it had to be super ripe, and you know, and I, you know, in the beginning years, I did the same with the Syrah from Elam, and picked at a 14.5% alcohol, and then I kind of realized, geez, what am I doing? I think it was only in 2016 when I actually started changing tact and started picking earlier, and picking still ripe, you know, phonetically ripeness. I reached that long time, you know, before I hit alcohols, you know, so I started picking slightly earlier on, and then started realizing the fruit profile completely changed. And you got this beautiful, elegant wine. And I realized I've been making huge mistakes for a long time. So very happy that I changed, and now I'm picking phonetically ripe and quite early. So I'm sitting at a 13% alcohol. And then you just preserve all that freshness. You don't have big, bold wines. I don't over extract. I work very gently with the fruit. I don't add any stems to the fermentations or anything like that. So it's definitely by far my favorite wine. Favorite wine to work with. I'm always amazed as to what I get. You know, and I don't put a lot of effort. It's not like I'm doing miracles in this winery with this. In fact, you know, it's probably the wine that I do the least effort with, because the grapes they're just doing all the work here, which is, I mean, I just love that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to trying that. And would you say the reserves are both particularly food wine?
For sure. Yeah, especially the white. The white is just, it's so moreish, you know, you just want to, like, it's chewy, you want to have food with it. I mean, the Syrah you could definitely drink on its own, but you know, food would go great with it as well. You know, definitely.
What would you pair ideally with those two?
With the white, I'll definitely go, you know, the white is very aromatic, and it's got this amazing acid. So I definitely go with your kind of almost your Thai foods, because it's got the kind of lemongrass, any food that's aromatic and they can stand up to. You need to pair your wine and your fruits aromatically, that they stand up to each other, because otherwise your wine's just going to fall flat. It's normally the way it goes. You're never going to say, oh, this food's not great, but the wine's fantastic. It's always the other way around.
I thought a Sauvignon doesn't go so well with spicy food. I thought the acid and the chili kind of clash, so that it makes it like too hot. Or
no, but the Sauvignon, because it's got the Semillon and it's got this amazing broad palate, it's got that good glycerol palate. It matches perfectly with Thai food. So no, it's a great, and also, you know, I'm talking Thai food with coconut milk and stuff like that. So that's a great pairing. And with the red, you know, anything, again, it's not a big extracted wine. So yes, any obviously meat cut will go with it, but because it's not big and extracted, it doesn't have that much tannin, so it's not like you want to have like just meat with it. It can go with anything else, you know. It can go with vegetarian, any mushroom dish, or you know, whatever. I'm so bad at pairing wines and foods, and I should ask the chef for this. I'm just
okay, fair enough.
But I know that the South Sam works really well with aromatic and Thai dishes. The Reserve Syrah, just drink it on its own. Just like.
Cool, I'll keep that in mind. And okay, so people can get your wine from your websites, and you don't really retail in bottle stores that I know of, right? Unless in some of the smaller
the guys
wine
like Caroline's and Vino Pronto and Wine Cellar online, Ex Animo online.
yes.
Those guys definitely have the wines. And Wine Concepts have the wines. So yeah, no, they are, you know, all your specialized wine.
Yeah.
They'll definitely have the wines.
Yeah. And I believe you've opened up a tasting room. Is that that's with Dawn Patrol? Is that right?
Tasting room. Yeah, you can call it a tasting room. It's actually a warehouse. So, and I just kind of transformed it.
Yeah.
So, yes, the idea is to open up eventually to the public. Currently, I'm still waiting for my on-off consumption license, so I don't have the liquor license. So, but yes, the idea is to do kind of tastings and events there, food and wine pairings, you know, any kind of wine evening. I don't think it's going to be necessarily open Mondays to Sundays. You know, it's just, it's far out for people. It's not on a wine farm. It is in an industrial area. But
where is it located?
It's in Heron Park, which is just outside of Kommetjie.
Oh, so, right. Okay.
Yeah. So, but it's a very cool space, and I had a friend of mine who's an interior designer, and she helped me a lot just to put stuff together. So it looks really cool, but it is still an industrial area. So it's kind of, there's a bit of a grunge feel to it, you know, a bit of a warehouse feel to it, which I think these days, you know, if you think about the Biscuit Mall and, you know, it works.
Yeah. People know. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Have you got any events coming up this year or early next year planned?
Yes, I've got an event coming up on Saturday. It's actually a friend of mine who's using the space, but we've just put wine into we just threw wine into it. It's actually, she's a celebrity makeup artist, and she needed the space to do a masterclass. And I said, well, fine, you can use the space. And she said, okay, well, just bring wine into this masterclass. And then we have another tasting coming up, and then I actually don't want to promote because I don't have my license, so I can't really sell from there. So try not to start and then stop, you know. So I really want to get going in the new year when I have my license and it's, you know, I can sell from there. So at the moment you can't sell from there, you can take orders, so it's just not, the flow is not right yet at the moment, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. And anything else exciting on the horizon for you?
Harvest is on the horizon. That's always exciting. Yes, I'm actually bottling in 2 weeks' time. I'm bottling a Chardonnay from a very cool vineyard out in close to Riversdale. It's Onder Duivenshoek Rivier. So I'm very excited about that. It's my first Chardonnay that I'll bottle.
Going to be under one of your wine labels?
Yes, so it's, I don't know if you're familiar with the Sonnerskloof range. So I had the Sonnerskloof white and the Sonnerskloof Syrah. So it'll be in that kind of, it's not Sonnerskloof, it's Onder Duivenshoek Rivier, but it will be in that packaging. So it's not under my reserve or my TSW. So yeah.
What does that translate to in English for people like me that don't speak Afrikaans?
Onder Duivenshoek is lower, Duivenshoek River, which is it's a river, but if you had to translate, Duivenshoek means pigeon cage river. So, but it's lower Duivenshoek River, which is close to Vermaaklikheid, close to Riversdale. So it's South Cape. Very exciting area. So I got the fruit there from the farm out there is Balea, and Gunther Schulz from Klein Constantia, he took over there and is doing absolutely miracles out there in the vineyards and with the wines. So I bought my grapes from him and super excited. So I'm bottling that, and I'm bottling the Sonnerskloof white, which I skipped last year because I didn't get grapes. I couldn't get grapes from the farm, and super excited about this year's vintage. This year's vintage. So bottling that as well, and then also bottling my reserve Sim. So that's all coming up in the next 2 weeks, which is exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from bottling, how soon are they available for sale?
I won't release probably until normally I keep these wines for a year in bottle. I'll see how they go, but definitely only after harvest next year, probably June, July next year. If I feel that they need more time in the bottle, I'll keep them back. You know, it's likely those are the type of wines that you don't have to follow up on. It's not like TSW Sauvignon or TSW Syrah that's in restaurants on lists, wine by the glass, and you need to kind of follow up with vintage. You can release when you think when it's ready. So I'll see. I'll check what they do in bottle. But I think, you know, tasting them now, I think they'll be ready in a half a year from now, mid next year.
Okay. Cool. I'll definitely look out for that. That sounds really exciting. So yeah, let's just wrap up because I think our hour is almost done. And just a reminder to anyone watching that you can order the mixed case of wine by Trizanne from us on lifestyling.co.za. And we are just going to keep that available for just under a month, so up until the 5th of December, so that we can package it and send it out for December before you guys go on holiday.
Cool.
So thank you so much, Trizanne, for joining us. I really appreciate your time. It's been lovely to chat to you.
Thanks, Sarah. I really appreciate your time too, and for inviting me. And yeah, lovely chatting to you. And you know, and on the lifestyling.co new venture, I wish you all the best of luck and success. I think it's great. You know, I think great things come out of stressful times. So
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So
yeah.
About it.
Thanks. Appreciate that. Thanks very much. Cool. I'll chat to you soon.
All right. Thanks so much.
Bye then.
Okay. Bye.